Welcome to the RTO Superhero podcast with me, Angela Connell, where we explore the complexities of compliance and how to ensure business success within an RTO. This podcast is for anyone in the training industry who wants to learn from my experience as an RTO consultant, RTO manager, trainer assessor and entrepreneur, as well as the experience of other experts in the training industry. Listen in and let us help you become an RTO superhero that you want to be.
Well, hello, and thank you so much for joining me. It's really thrilling to be here with you. As you can see on your screen, I'm Paul Dunn, and I'm right now live in Singapore. And one of the things that seems very important to me about businesses are labels, the words we say about ourselves, often the title of the business. And we are about to spend some magical time with someone who has a really interesting name, right? As in the name of the business, which is called, now, when I first looked at it, I remember I went Vivacity, but no, you've got to run it together and you get Vivacity, you see? And I thought, how clever is that to get a business name called Vivacity? And what we're about to do is to meet the person behind that, the founder of it, the person who makes it all work wonderfully well, and that is Angela Connell. Angela, it's so nice to have you here.
Hi, Paul. Thank you very much for that lovely introduction.
Well, it's cool. And you know, because when people, what I love about the name is it conjures up some sort of emotion, right? Vivacity. So tell us more about Vivacity, how you started that, what it stands for, and what you do.
Yeah, okay. So the reason why I came up with Vivacity is a bit of a story behind it. So when I first started doing RTO consulting, I actually called my business RTO Consult. But the problem was there was actually other consultants out there that had a very similar name. So there was RTO Consultant and RTO Consulting. And so I went through a period where I decided to rebrand and change the business name. And I actually went to a coaching event and they said, what you should do is choose a name that describes who you are. And I tried a few different words and looked them up. And Vivacity means colourful and outgoing. And anybody who knows me knows that I'm quite colourful and outgoing.
You are indeed that, and that comes through in everything you do. And talking of what you do, let's get really clear on what you do, although what you do is evolving, which is kind of interesting. So talk us through that.
So when I first started Vivacity, what I did was more one-on-one consulting. So a training organisation would hire me and I would go in and do one-on-one work with them. That was over 11 years ago. Things have changed quite a bit, and in particular over the last 12 months. So when we evolved from that to I moved into an office and I hired my first team members because I had so many clients, I wasn't able to service all of the clients. And then we've
by the way, that just notice that is a very, very good sign. You're going to find out why that happened in just a moment.
Oh, so we had so many clients, and our focus back then was just compliance. So we focused on. I actually had a list of all the things I could do, like initial registration or re-registration or go do an audit. I actually had a list of so many things. And I had a coach at the time who said to me, Angela, you are confusing your potential client because they don't actually understand what you offer because you've just listed all these different things that you do. And he said, I want you to refine that down to 5 products. And I said, what about 6? He said, no, 5. You can only do 5. And I went, but I've got so many more. So then we came up with our packages. So we have the Kickstart, which is for initial registration, Reboot, which is for re-registration. We have Systems Check, which is an internal audit. We have an add-on package, which is doing an addition to scope. And I have since added more packages to our program. And the biggest change has been, as I was saying earlier, in the last 12 months, I've always been very passionate about business and helping our clients with the business side of their RTO, including marketing and business development and get access to government funding and things like that, looking at the other side, because we can't survive in compliance alone.
And it's interesting. And by the way, of course, there may be people watching us now who are in international or in other countries than Australia, and they're going, what is this RTO thing, right? So just to be clear, that's Registered Training Organization. And what Angela's referring to there is this whole thing about you need to be compliant, right, for various reasons. And Angela, talk about this interesting move from really getting the compliance nailed. In fact, let's talk about that just that aspect for the minute. Tell us what you do in that space that is different from what people might expect you to do.
Okay, so in general, a lot of the other consultants that you could hire in this space as a RTO consultant, they would provide documentation. They would also provide consulting services where they'd come in and they'd help with the initial registration and the re-registration. But what we do that's different, we do provide policies, procedures, forms and documents. We guarantee those, so they're 100% guaranteed. If they're non-compliant, we'll fix them. We haven't.
And of course, if they were non-compliant, then the RTOs couldn't get funding and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So it's really important. Yeah. Okay.
Really important. And it takes a long time to write policies and procedures as well. So we've got a change of legislation that's happening next year, and we've already mapped out 6 months to do the rewrite of policies and procedures, because it's quite a bit of work. And so the compliance side is very important, but where a lot of other consultants stop is they just do the documentation, or they go in and do everything for the RTO, and then the problem is they don't know how to do it themselves when down the track when an auditor comes in, and then they end up with huge non-compliances. So what we do is we don't just consult, we coach and we teach them how to do it. So we have online training that includes a range of training on how to implement compliance and a continuous improvement approach throughout your organisation. We also have coaching services. So once a week we do a mastermind, and we are keeping our clients accountable on the business side of their RTO. And I think the training has been the huge part. We were doing it all face-to-face, and a couple of years ago we launched online, and we haven't looked back. Our clients are getting magnificent results from the online training.
Well, we're going to talk about that, because obviously, when COVID hit, that must have been like, oh my gosh, and we'll come to that in just a second. But So I'll make sure that we've got that. So what you're talking about is a transference of skills, as well as having everything sort of well documented and everything else. So they just pick it up and run with it. But the transference, in your view, is the crucial piece. Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, it's absolutely crucial that you're not only, you can, is that old analogy is you could give a man a fish, or you could teach them how to fish. So what we do is we want them to be able to excel at, and that culture of compliance is part of their organisation. If you get a consultant who just comes in and does everything for you, you're not going to get that culture throughout your organisation. And that's what we teach is it's not just one person who's doing the training. Trainers and assessors can get on and do the training. Administration staff can do it, because it's all online. So it's a lot easier and accessible for the team to be able to access. And we think it's really important that you've got everyone on the team who have that culture of compliance within your organisation, because then it's easy. You're not making it difficult.
Exactly so. And talking of culture, the thought that comes up for me using the word thought is thought leadership. And that's kind of like how I see you, which is why it's such a pleasure to be chatting with you. And you mentioned something else that might seem a bit strange to people joining us now, and that is this mastermind thing. And talk about that, because I know from your perspective that that's a really important thing.
Yeah, well, the mastermind was something I've wanted to do. It's more group coaching, and it's something I've wanted to do for years, because in my heart, I am a coach. That's what I love doing. Whenever I went and saw a client, I spent half the day coaching the clients, often in business. And we actually have an unwritten rule in our office. If the client needs more business help, I'll go to the client. If the client needs more help with the compliance side, I have my operations manager go. And that's because I'm more the business-minded. I'll look at, and this is what often happen, is I'd look at their business, I'd look at their compliance, but I'd also go, did you know that you could do this, this, and this as well? Because I know what they can do that will still be compliant. So it's looking at it from a business perspective and ensuring that they're compliant at the same time. So our mastermind is group coaching, where we're focused on, one of the things that I love is scaling up. It's a book that we've used.
Well, Vern is a friend of mine, and for anyone listening to us now, this is not, it's not our job to go and grab the book, but go grab the book.
It is such a good book. It really changed my business and the way I do things. And so what we teach is based on scaling up, but contextualized for the training industry.
Yeah, it's got to be contextualized. Exactly. Yeah. It really has to be that. Yeah. Otherwise, it doesn't quite make sense. And scaling up in and of, one of the really interesting things about when you scale, it's kind of like you really have to think not so much about yourself. Most people think it's about thinking about yourself, but it's actually really thinking about the outcomes that you provide, which is, one of the threads where you're at. And of course, one of the other things you have to do is to respond quickly, to things, right? Because things happen, and now we know it as a result of what happened at the beginning of 2020. That things can come from, I was going to go that way, but no, it's left field, right? It's over that way. So talk about what happened there, and often we without wishing to minimize any of the terrible things that have happened as a result of that. One of the things that I think marks you as like a standout person in this space is you always understand there's a silver lining somewhere, if only you look for it, right? So talk about what happened to you through that process.
So I've had a pretty rough year at the start of the year before even the coronavirus came in. I was in and out of hospital, and I ended up having my gallbladder removed. And on that fateful day, the 23rd of March, where it was announced that we were going into lockdown, I'm waiting to get out of hospital, and I'm watching the news. And while I was watching it, I'm thinking, majority of our clients are delivering their training face-to-face. If we go into lockdown, we were going into lockdown, what are they going to do? They're not going to be able to continue delivering their training. They're not going to be able to continue their business. That would affect them where they may not survive through all of this. And I thought, well, what can I do? I've been delivering training online for over 6 years. And I thought, what they need to learn is how to transition from face-to-face to online training. And so I launched within a week. So that Friday I was in hospital. The following Monday I launched that we were going to do a masterclass on education in isolation. I came up with a name over the weekend, and we did a masterclass 2 days later. And we got all of our clients on. We also got a lot of people from the industry. We had 100 people come online for this masterclass. And basically I taught the tools, techniques, and technology that they needed to transition from face-to-face to online. And then we did a mastermind following that, where I did a 6-week course on all of those things that they needed to transition to online.
You see what I mean, everybody, by thought leadership, but also when you look at vivacity, to me there's like in that word there's speed, right? Well, being able to do that, right? So really, really quickly. And you mentioned just a while ago some significant changes coming up in the industry as in the next few months. Talk about those and the impact they may have.
Yeah, so we're going through a VET reform right now. So the vocational education and training industry, the government are doing a full reform of how we're regulated as training providers. It's going to have a massive impact. A couple of years back, you would have heard we had all these issues with vet fee help, and there was people doing dodgy training and claiming money when they shouldn't have, and not telling the students that they were actually going to have to, they was giving them free training apparently, but they actually had to pay it back in their tax, which brought a bad name on the training industry. And then following that, the ASQA, who is the Australian Skills Quality Authority, they came down hard on all of these training organisations. And basically we were to the stage of being over-regulated, and it really affected the industry. They shut down 40% of the RTOs that were there.
It often happens that way, doesn't it? When governments choose to move needles, right, they sometimes move needles like way too far. Right?
Yeah. And so the regulatory body last year, we actually had a politician stand up in Parliament, Andrew Lambie, and he spoke about how ridiculous it is, how we're over-regulated and how much it costs, even for not-for-profit training organisations. We invited him to come and speak at our conference last year. We ended up getting even higher, and we got the Education Minister, Steve Irons, to come and speak at our conference instead. And it was very much around how can we fix this situation. A lot of RTOs were struggling because of how much it was costing to be compliant, and fear of their whole industry, their business being shut down by a regulator. So we really focused on, well, what are the problems of the industry and how can we solve them? And that's where, I got in with the masterminds and the masterclasses and changed it. Now we're going through a massive vet reform where they're going to rewrite all of the legislation, which means that we are going to have to rewrite all of our policies and procedures and documents as well. We are also, not only that, we are also going through a restructure of our Australian qualifications framework. So currently we have Certificate 1, 2, 3, 4, Diploma, Advanced Diploma. We're moving from that to micro-credentialing, which is what the National Skills Commission has identified, is that industry is saying that the training we're offering right now does not actually meet industry needs. We need shorter courses that get the students the skills they need to get a job, and which is where Job Trainer comes in. Job Trainer is very much focused on micro-credentialing and getting people back to work now. We don't want to wait a year, 2 years. We need to get them upskilled, cross-trained and into jobs, because there are jobs out there, but what the National Skills Commission has identified is there's not sufficient skills for the current workforce to fill those places. So
it's fascinating stuff. And I mean, we talk as if everybody understands it, but let's just get clear on it, because there are differences, and significant differences, right, between accredited and not credited, right? Talk about those just briefly.
Yeah, so we often will get people who will come to us who are currently delivering non-accredited training. So non-accredited training means you're not regulated, you're not under a registered training organisation environment. You can issue a certificate, and as long as you're not using the government logos, and you could do non-accredited training. There's a lot of coaching companies that do that. There's also a lot of non-accredited training providers in software skills and things like that are out there. But when someone comes to us and says, I'm thinking about becoming an RTO, I'll ask them why. Why do you want to become an RTO? Now, the reasons why you would become an RTO is because the industry sector you're serving wants accredited training. So they want a qualification. One really good example I can give you is we had a client who came to us a couple of years ago who was delivering non-accredited project management training. They had a big mining company come to them and say, hey, we love your project management training that you're delivering, but we now have to have accredited training. And the reason why is for insurance purposes, where we need to make sure that our staff are actually properly qualified, and it's going to reduce our insurance premiums with that as well. So that was a really good reason, and $2 million of funding for this training was a really good reason to become an RTO. But if your industry doesn't require it, I wouldn't do it, because there's a lot of work involved with being.
Oh, that's interesting.
And we won't recommend everybody do it.
Well, that is interesting, isn't it? But you know what is also interesting, as I'm sitting here in Singapore. Isn't that amazing, by the way, that we can do this? I'm in Singapore, you're in Australia. It's really interesting how that works. What's interesting is the energy you bring to this, right? Because I mean, people watching go, oh, you know, and it's really exciting. And the reason I mention that is often when you think about regulation and certification, it's like, you know, it's kind of like that.
But it's very clear. Why I named it Vivacity.
Well, exactly right. But it's very clear that you bring this energy to it. It's also very clear when you were talking about the conference, it's also, and the mastermind, it's really clear that you also believe in the wisdom of many, you know, and of listening to the people around you and doing some really stunning things, one of which we'll talk about in a minute. But just for now, I'm always fascinated when, you know, I have the privilege of talking with people like this. And, you know, you get to the point where you go, okay, well, you know, the time's up sort of thing, which it is, by the way. But you get to that point and then you finish everything off and you go, oh, I should have asked her that question, right? Sort of thing. And this is one of the toughest questions I could ever ask anybody. So as you think about where we've gone, what's the one question that I should have asked you?
Oh, one question you should have asked me.
See, it's a tough question, right?
Maybe where we're going to go in the future and what is the future of it.
Oh. Okay. Okay. So if I were to ask you that question, what would you say?
Okay. So I use this analogy a lot. I crystal ball it. So I crystal ball what I think is going to happen based on what my over 20 years of experience in the industry and what I've seen in the past. So
you're kind of thinking it forward. Is that?
Yeah.
Is that
I look into the crystal ball and I go, okay, with the vet reform, with micro-credentialing, how is that going to impact industry first and the community, and how can we improve our training to meet industry needs? Because that's why we are RTOs in the first place. We're meeting industry and community needs. Right. Then I also look into that crystal ball to look at, well, okay, how is that going to impact the training industry as an RTO? Right. How is that going to impact you? So firstly, I think the vet reform is going to have a massive impact on the training industry, and it's actually going to be a really good thing. I think quality auditing is actually really important for our industry because it ensures that we have a quality framework to deliver quality education, which is a passion of mine. Quality education and giving access to everybody to be able to get access to quality education is very important to me. And so I want to work with those training organisations where it's important to them as well. Micro-credentialing is going to meet industry needs. So how do we adapt to meet those industry needs? They're the problems of the future that we are solving now.
That's fantastic. And, you know, it's kind of interesting. I mean, you know, some people would say the word passion like there's passion. But when you say it, I mean, you actually feel it, right? It's central to Vivacity. It really is cool. The other interesting thing is there, I mentioned this whole thing about thought leadership and thinking forward. But one of the things, and this couples with what you were just saying about your passion, because you also, this is sometimes difficult to talk about, but let's just quickly touch on it, because when you say you're passionate about education, you don't just mean in what you do. And let's move from thinking forward to paying it forward, and just talk about one of the interesting initiatives that you're putting in place there.
Okay. So my grand vision, and I actually have it written down of what we would like to achieve, is to be able to get education out there to people who can't afford education, who can't access it. It's a big goal of mine. In particular, for me personally, it's also helping women and getting into vocational education, any type of education really, but I'm really focused on vocational education. So as you know, I recently joined B1G1, and we're now offering providing training for people who couldn't get access to training. So it's awesome. It was my 10-year goal, but now I'm doing it now. So I'm really, really happy about that. I didn't realise how little could provide so much.
Yeah, exactly. The impact is really huge, isn't it?
Massive.
And yeah. And you having that as a 10-year goal, which we've been able to, again, it speaks volumes for who you are and the contribution that you're making, because you're coming from something as great as Vivacity is, you're coming from something even greater, which actually makes Vivacity greater, if you see what I mean. And talking of which, you're doing a new retreat. Do you want to talk quickly about the retreat that's coming up?
Yeah, so for the first time ever, we're now
there you go. That's why I wanted you to talk about it, because it's the first time ever, right? So listen up, everybody. This is new, right? You heard it here the first time.
We're going to be running a strategic planning retreat just for the training industry. So what's different about this is we're focused on strategies. So once again, scaling up, using some of the strategies that are in there and how to scale and grow your business, but from an RTO perspective. So it's very much focused on looking at the compliance requirements, but also how do you market specifically for training industries, particularly when you're in a very competitive market. How to build your business when it's very hard to be unique in the training industry. You have to think of other ways to do that, because there's other providers out, and you're competing against TAFE as well. So you need to be able to identify what's the best way to be able to, for us, how can we serve our clients and the industry better? And that is to help them grow and scale as a training organisation. So there's more quality education that's been provided out there. If we can't survive on compliance alone, we need to be successful in our business as well as delivering quality education. And that's what the strategic planning retreat is all about. It's looking at the other side of the business and how can we help you to grow and scale. And we've had massive impact with clients this year who are doing the Mastermind. I can't wait for next year. It's just going to be awesome. They have taken what we've taught them and ran with it, transitioning from face-to-face to online, job trainer funding. They're making massive changes with their training. They're also really passionate about wanting to educate other people and people who can't access education normally. So, it's going to be, I'm so excited. It's the best content I've ever written. And I'm so excited about how we've contextualized scaling up and how we can do that to improve our training industry.
Wow, what a great way to reflect on what's happened in 2020 and what's happened there, and what you're making happen as we move forward. And Angela, surprise, surprise. I mean, seriously, when I used to think of RTOs, it was RTOs. Now I think it's like RTOs, right? It's that you've successfully kind of how shall I say, radiated that passion and made it exciting and made people understand the real value of what they give or what they do. So it's been an amazing time with you. And it just occurs to me, too, that one of the things we should do, because hopefully people watching us now going, well, that's pretty exciting, but how do I get in touch with Vivacity? So we should let people know how to do that, right?
Of course. So they can get in contact with Vivacity by going to vivacity.com.au, or you can give us a call on 1300 729 455, or you can email us at hello@vivacity.com.au.
Oh, hello. I love that.
And say hello. We'd love to hear from you and what you're doing. What we're very passionate about with working with our clients is not just the compliance side, it's looking at the business as a whole. And a lot of the time we're coaching on team members as well and what they need to do in their business, because often it's very lonely at the top. And no one's keeping you accountable, which is what we do with our clients.
Wow. Just fascinating. Sort of, it's like disrupting, but in a lovely way, right? So, Angela, thank you so much for contributing to my day. It's just been so exciting chatting with you. And for those of you who've been sharing all of this, you now know how to get in touch with Angela. Make sure you do, and check out that retreat too. That sounds like it could be really, really interesting. Angela, thank you so much. It's been an absolute thrill chatting with you.
Oh, it's been absolutely awesome, Paul. I've really enjoyed talking with you. And as you can hear, I love talking about the training industry. I could talk about it all day.
I think you could. Okay. I'll catch you soon. Thanks so much, Angela. Really, really great.
Awesome.
How did we go? Very
good. That was excellent.
Yeah, you like that?
Yeah.
I didn't realize. I just saw the dogs down there as well.
They've been wandering around.
That's really cool. I should know that. But I think we kind of covered pretty much everything, right? Without necessarily going, question, which was really cool. So you realize that what you've now done is you've completely ruined my weekend. Do you realize that?
Why? Are you going to go research to RTO?
Now I'm going to, well, you see, I could give that to somebody else to edit, right? I could, right? Someone else in the B1G1 team, but I enjoyed it a lot. So, and there's little nuances that I want to make sure that we get. So you haven't ruined my weekend. You've given me some interesting things to do. So that
there was something else that I wanted to add, and I'll put it on my recording as well, is
go.
The reason why I'm in this industry to begin with.
Come on, let's do that now. Let's do that now.
Yeah.
Let's do it. No, we can do that now. Let's do it now. Okay, and then we can cut it in. Is that all right?
Yep.
Can we do that? Yeah. All righty. So, Angela, I was talking about your passion and how it comes through, but frequently that's because of the reason that you do things. What my friend Simon Sinek refers to as the why. So if I were to ask you what that is for you, how would you describe it?
Really good question. Because for me, it actually was quite a journey to figure out why I am in this industry. And a lot of people would wonder why. My why is when I first started in the training industry, I started as a training coordinator, but then I got into teaching. So I was teaching Cert 2 to Diploma in Business. My very first course, I had a class of mainly women returning back to work after having children. So they hadn't been in the workforce for a long time. They'd also never done anything in business before. And on the first day, I asked all of our students to stand up and introduce themselves to the rest of the class. So who they are, where they're from, and why did they choose this course. Unbeknownst to me, there was a lot of students in the room who were very scared to stand up and actually introduce themselves. I have no idea about that because I have no problem standing up anywhere and speaking.
Sure.
10 weeks later, we finished, it was a Certificate 2 in business. We finished the course and I asked the students to do the same. I asked them to stand up and speak to the class and say what was the one thing that they got out of this training that has changed their lives. And this one student, she stood up. She was about 20 years older than me at the time. And she had been at-home mum. And she said, Angela, what I have learned is I can now, you asked me at the start of this course to stand up and introduce myself. I was so scared. Now I have the confidence to stand up and speak to a group of people, and I know I feel comfortable in myself to do that. I've got goosebumps right now with this, like it did on the day, because I was like, hold on, I thought I was teaching business. And what I realised is we, as trainers, we don't just teach the subject. We teach confidence. We teach how to build self-esteem. We teach communication skills and techniques, things that they wouldn't have had maybe in their home environment. It is so much more what we learn, and the gratitude that you get from your students is absolutely amazing. And then I went on to own my own RTO, and I would have parents and brothers and sisters and aunts and cousins coming up to my trainers and saying to them what an impact they had had on their brother, sister, wife's lives, and how that has impacted not only that person but their whole family. Education is the future. It is so much about how we change lives through education. And this is why we do what we do now, because we're changing lives through many training organisations around Australia. And that's what I want to do. That's the impact I want to have.
It's so interesting you said that, about changing lives, because that's, and thank you for bringing us to that point, because it's so true. And that leads me to think, and if I'm allowed to mention a particular, no, I think I am. Yes, I am. So if you think about that, that you're changing lives, and just imagine for the moment that MasterCard, that was the name, right? MasterCard was responsible for your marketing. What would they say? They would say it's priceless. Changing lives is priceless, really.
It is. And it's not just the person you're teaching. It's so
ripple.
Joining B1G1 and looking at how we can educate one person and provide education for them. They take it home and they're teaching their family and aunts and uncles, and that there's more than just what they're doing. There's so much more Absolutely. That you can do once you've got education. You've been listening to the RTO Superhero podcast with me, Angela Connell. Do you know someone else who could benefit from learning about compliance and business development within their RTO? Please take a moment to share this and any other episode via your podcast app, email, or social media channels. Each share helps us reach listeners just like you who can benefit from our content. The RTO Superhero podcast is proud to be part of the Experts on Air podcast network.